Hi, I'm Colin. I'm a doctoral student in clinical psychology, and I've spent years coaching parents, teens, and burnt out adults on how to break free from emotional ruts, including the habits and self talk patterns that keep them stuck. I also run a tutoring and motivation coaching practice where I help people rebuild confidence, stay focused, and take action towards who they want to become. And honestly, I've been there myself, stuck into old narratives that make me feel small, even after I've outgrown them. Today, I'm going to be digging into one of the most common habits that hold people back, over apologizing, and how shifting the way we talk to ourselves can completely change the way we show up in the world. So, like some of you, I've been enjoying the newest season of Black Mirror, and I watched the sequel to the USS Callister episode. And there were some really interesting moments in the episode that I wanted to explore and talk about. So, in around the middle mark of the episode, and there will be spoilers here, Nanette, our main leader, captain of the ship, faces herself, the real version of herself, or the real life version of herself. And you can tell that she doesn't like what she sees. So we have this bold virtual copy of Nanette who basically berates the real world Nanette for being too apologetic and timid. As series creator Charlie Brooker explains, the digital Nanette has stepped up and become this very capable leader, whereas the real world Nanette is running behind on that. This sci-fi scenario highlights a very human phenomenon, the uneasy tension we feel when judging who we used to be. Many of us can relate to cringing at our former selves or wishing we could go back to shake some sense into ourselves. Why do we judge our past selves so harshly? And what can psychology tell us about finding a healthier narrative? I would like to explore some key theories today: narrative identity, self-continuity, and self-compassion, to help understand this self-judgment that we put on ourselves and how to recognize our own growth throughout time. So, why do we judge who we used to be? It's common to look back at your younger version of yourself and wince at all the mistakes and immaturity. I was reading this article recently talking about this phenomenon, and they had a quote from this famous Czech novelist. It was at the beginning, and I'll put a screenshot up, where they said, "This jerk that I was, I wouldn't like to see him." And he's reflecting on his younger self. This blatant self-criticism resonates with many of us. Psychological research offers several insights into why we tend to harshly judge our past selves. First is the self-improvement narrative, often disparaging our past selves as a way to emphasize how much we've improved. According to temporal self-appraisal theory, people often maintain self-esteem by viewing their distant past selves negatively and seeing their current selves as much better by comparison. In one set of studies, individuals rated their old selves from years ago far more critically than their current selves, even when objective measures showed little change, basically that this personal growth had been significant in their minds. By mentally relegating flaws to the past, we also get to feel better about who we are now. The second aspect is hindsight and higher standards. With the benefit of experience, our past decisions can look obviously wrong. What was acceptable then might seem foolish today because our standards have evolved. We forget that our past self didn't have the knowledge, skills, or perspective we do now. This hindsight can make us judge old actions without comparison for the limited perspective that we had. In the Black Mirror example, this virtual Nanette has literally gained new experiences and confidence that the real Nanette totally lacks, and that makes the real one seem frustratingly naive by comparison. I also really think that should have been one of the biggest focuses of the episode. They didn't spend that much time with the two of them, and I think that would have been the real place for growth for this character, to see how much growth that the virtual version of her had, or for maybe the virtual version to have some better sympathy for the real world version of her. But obviously, in another spoiler alert, the real world version of her technically dies after she's hit by a car. And to me, that felt like a real cop out. There were so many really interesting ideas to explore in that episode, and Unfortunately, they didn't. And it sucked because they had 90 minutes to do it. But, all right, let's continue. Identity shift and distancing. As we grow, we often develop new values and personalities that can feel disconnected from our former selves. The bigger the gap between who you are now and who you were then, the easier it is to view the old you as almost completely different, even one you might dislike. This can especially happen after major life changes or personal growth spurts. Distancing from a past self, like I'm not that person anymore, can be a defense mechanism to protect our current identity. In some cases, a bit of distance helps. For example, someone recovering from addiction might need to see their past as not the real me in order to move forward. But excessive distancing can lead to outright self-rejection, where we only see the flaws of our past and not the context or good intentions behind them. Lastly, we're going to talk about shame and regret. Strong feelings of shame or regret about past actions can also fuel harsh judgment. If we feel we failed or hurt others, our inner critic might go into overdrive, labeling our past self with unkind names, coward, idiot, jerk. While this self-criticism signals that we've grown morally or emotionally, since we're recognizing past mistakes, it can also become toxic rumination. We might get stuck berating our old selves in a way that undermines our self-esteem instead of acknowledging that everyone makes mistakes and we have since learned from them. So let's now look into narrative identity theory, which basically shapes how we view our growth over time. Human beings are natural storytellers, and each of us has an internalized life story that psychologists call our narrative identity. According to Dan McAdams, narrative identity is essentially a person's internalized and evolving life story, integrating the reconstructed past and imagined future to provide life with some degree of unity and purpose. In other words, we make sense of who we are by weaving our past experiences and future aspirations into a coherent narrative. How we tell the story of our past selves greatly influences whether we feel ashamed or proud of our personal journey. Importantly, we have creative license in interpreting our past. Two people with identical setbacks can narrate them very differently. One might say, I wasted 3 years in that relationship, I was stupid, while another might frame it as, I learned so much from that heartbreak and it made me stronger. Research on narrative identity shows that the way we edit and assign meaning to past events affects our well-being. In fact, people who find redemptive meanings in their past suffering, seeing bad experiences as leading to positive growths or lessons learned, tend to have higher mental health and maturity. For example, someone might reframe a painful job failure as the catalyst that pushed them into a more fulfilling career. By constructing a narrative where our former mistakes or hardships serve a purpose in our development, we transform personal history from a source of regret into a source of strength. I can definitely relate to this too because I do stand-up comedy in Los Angeles, and I've bombed so hard before, like just crickets or people running me off the stage. It was so bad. I can remember one particularly really bad set where I was on my college campus, and it was basically an open mic, but they had a ton of students there because it was like a popular open mic show, and you had musicians and different types of acts, and I did stand up, and I was really honestly in a bad mood, and I carried that with me on stage. And not only were my jokes just, it had this energy of negativity, but I also tried some crowd work and that didn't go well. And they literally had to take the microphone from me because sometimes when you're on stage and you're in a negative spiral, you lose track of time. That also happens if you're doing well, but yeah, when you're on stage, sometimes you just don't realize what's going on around you. And I didn't realize how much everyone was hating me. I was like 21 years old and I really bombed, and it affected me for a while. For a few months, I was like very uncomfortable on stage, incredibly scared, and I felt so much regret and shame over that set. Now I look back on it as a really great experience. One, because that's the worst I've ever done. And by comparison, when I don't do well, doesn't even come close. If I have a bad set at some normal show, like it's not a big deal to me. And also I've had that experience now of just being in a room where people like thought I was so bad that they genuinely didn't like me. I think it's healthy to have that, especially for someone who wants to perform, to just know what that feels like and to get through it and realize you move on from it. And it's not like I made fun of some group or was like really harsh to anybody. It was really just I did a bad job and people didn't like it. But my mindset is that was a growth experience. That made me better and makes me more comfortable on stage now than I think I would have been otherwise. Anyway, so if we return to that Black Mirror episode, we can imagine Nanette reframing her story. Instead of the virtual self simply scolding the real world self, they could integrate their experience. The timid Nanette was doing her best in a difficult environment, and her struggles set the stage for the capable leader, Nanette, to emerge. In a healthy personal narrative, these two versions of Nanette would be seen as the same person on a journey. Act 1 and Act 2 of one character arc, rather than adversaries. Building such a cohesive story is part of developing self-understanding and resilience. I think one last aspect that's really important is just emphasizing this continuity and wholeness that we all have. You have to remind yourself that you are the same person who went through those past moments, and that's a good thing. All those experiences, good and bad, are pieces of the puzzle that make up you. In Black Mirror, Nanette's literally merges with her stronger self and becomes like whole again. In real life, you don't need a sci-fi brain merge to integrate your past and present. You just need to accept that who you were is part of who you are today. Try to basically befriend your past self as an integral, albeit younger version of you. This sense of continuity can actually give you greater resilience. It's easier to move forward when you aren't rejecting parts of yourself. As one psychology article put it, making peace with your former self is like making friends with your past, which can improve mental health and emotional resilience. So the next time you find yourself harshly judging the old you, pause and take a closer look. You might just find that the old you needs a bit of gratitude and maybe an apology from you for being so hard on them. After all, you wouldn't be who you are today without who you were yesterday. As the reunited Nanette in Black Mirror illustrates, when the pieces of ourselves come together, strengths, flaws, past, present, we become whole. Embracing our past self as a valued part of our ongoing story can turn self-criticism into self-compassion, fostering a healthier self-esteem and a hopeful path forward. In the story of your life, every chapter matters, including the chapter you've outgrown. All right, that's it for me. If this video gave you a new way to think about yourself or even caught you noticing a few old apology habits, I'd love to hear about it down below. Drop a comment. I will be in the comments with you. Share what some of your old habits were. I shared some of mine, or maybe share some way that you're going to start reframing your story. If you found this helpful, hit the like button. It really makes a difference in the algorithm. And if you want more videos about the psychology of growth, confidence, and breaking old patterns, make sure to subscribe.